Hi, my little lovelies. Welcome back to the GOAT. So, what are we going to be discussing on this week's episode? Well, actually, I want to travel back in time a little bit. For those of you who are not aware, I am a major nerd myself. I actually contemplated going back and forth with the name of the podcast. Just something a little bit more like nerdify the name of the podcast. And the reason why I went with the GOAT is because um, it just it's us all encompassing of all my nerdy um, interests. So I don't have to stick with one topic. So that's the reason why I went with the GOAT. It's just all encompassing, greatest of all time. So whatever we want to talk about in the realm of nerd, whether it's nerdy sports or nerdy comic books, here's the place to talk about it. So with that being said, I wanted to travel back in time just a little bit and talk a little bit about the finale of The Mandalorian. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the finale because it happened a little while ago and I probably should have put this podcast out um, way before now. But, I just want to hit on some areas of this show that I really like, some areas I didn't like. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on it because I only got 30 minutes on this podcast. So the thing I want to talk about most now, spoiler alert, there's going to be some spoilers in this episode, obviously, for talking about something that has already happened. They're going to be spoilers. So my biggest thing with the finale is that I loved it. I absolutely loved the finale. And the reason why this is such a big thing for me that I loved it is because I was so up and down during the course of the actual season with not so much with the content. Well, yes, it was the content, but it was more the narrative structure of the way the season flowed. I don't think the season flowed well. And so although I was kind of sticking with it, I know fans out there have their gripes and they're like, I'm not like a super huge, so let me paraphrase this entire conversation about the Mandalorian finale just by saying I'm not the hugest Star Wars fan. Okay. I like the world. I enjoy Star Wars movies. I enjoyed the first three movies the most out of everything. But I'm not one of those people who read books. And even when they bring in characters from like some of the books and things, I have to go like Google search, like who this character, what's their background, did I miss something in a movie? And come to find out it's from like some offshoot, author who created a book around a character in the world or something along those lines. So there are people out there who are really, really, really obviously into Star Wars and they know all the canon and all the different areas and different spaces of canon that exist in that world. I'm not one of those people. So I do watch the movies. I do know the general gist of Star Wars, what it's about, and the main characters and things like that. There's a lot of other TV shows that I need to get caught up on, like Andor. I really, really want to see Andor, and I've been saying it for a long time, and I still haven't done it. So just to let you know where my knowledge of the world of Star Wars kind of sits, that's where it is. But with that being said, I was not necessarily confused, um, not necessarily confused, but what I was when it came to a lot of the story that we wanted to see, which was essentially Din and Grogu. That's what we wanted, and that's what we came into this season expecting. And then we got Bo, and we got a lot of Bo, and I love Bo, but I had the same gripe that pretty much everyone who watched the season had, with the story kind of being taken away from Din and being given. It was like the where Din uh, got the dark saber. The trade off was Bo getting the storyline. And so for the first like three episodes, it was kind of slow. It was building up, just building up, but you just couldn't really tell what it was building up to. And then it just focused so heavily on Bo to the point where we were starting to question. I was like, well, are they trying to like slowly adjust the Mandalorian to be Bo-Katan's story as opposed to, Dan's story. But I'm gonna do a podcast where I kind of rehash all of my, confusion and gripes about the entire season. I want this to be kind of focused on the finale because, again, this podcast is a little bit late. So, it was the ups and downs. It was, the same gripes that everyone had during the season. I had as well. But then you start getting into, the narrative outside of even Bo and Den, and you start getting into Moff Gideon and that whole, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. At the time that we were going through the whole Moff Gideon fiasco, I'll call it the fiasco. Again, we're going to get into specifics when I do the podcast that kind of goes over the entire season. Um, it was really confusing because we didn't know where it fit. And we didn't really get a good sense of where Moff Gideon and the fiasco that is Moff Gideon and his conspiracy. And we didn't really get how any of that fit because we didn't know it was like a weird puzzle where none of the pieces fit until literally the last two episodes, but specifically the very last episode. And it was so funny to me watching it because regardless of how confusing some of the episodes were, I stuck with it. And I'm like, no, I still love Den. I still love Grogu. And I do love Bo. I don't love Bo necessarily taking over the whole show, but I do still love Bo. So get to the final episode. And all of a sudden, it's like a lightning bolt goes off, and all of the pieces come together with Moff Gideon, with his plans and his conspiracy, and the going back to Mandalore and the action that we saw in the last episode. And I don't really, I don't want to get. I feel like if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have seen the finale, right? I don't think hopefully okay, so I'm just gonna say okay, so I'm not gonna make this podcast heavy spoilers, and I really want to wrap this up because this wasn't supposed to be all about the Mandalorian. I want to move on to other topics, but um like I said, I'm gonna do a podcast, and I think I'm gonna do a podcast for each episode of the Mandalorian. Although it's late, we can kind of go over and analyze the episodes a little bit more because I've had time to separate myself from it, analyze it. I might have to actually go back and watch some of the episodes that I wasn't super into, that didn't really follow Din and Grogu. Again, it was more in line with the Moff Gideon conspiracy storyline that we didn't know we were getting at the time. And so I kind of, like a lot of people, fell off those episodes and didn't pay as much attention. So I might have to go back and rewatch them. But with that being said, the ending, the finale, the way it ended, with it kind of everything coming full circle, it did come full circle. Everything did come full circle with Moff Gideon, the conspiracy, how all those side storylines finally played into the larger picture of the Mandalorian, how why they focus so much on Bo and getting Bo back established as the leader of Mandalore. It all led up to the finale and us getting the Mandalorian back on track because it derailed. You have to understand, it derailed season two, the end of season two, when Din and Grogu separated. When Grogu went off to train as a Jedi with Luke, everyone thought like this is it. Din could go off and just be the space cowboy that he was meant to be. Grogu's going to go off. He's going to become a Jedi. That's the end of their story. Where the creators, I think, when it comes to Mandalorian, really, really, really did not want that. They did not want the story to end with those two. They really wanted this for whatever reason. People, saying it's fan service or however it goes. It doesn't matter. But what they wanted the story to focus around was Din and Grogu still. And for them to do that, they needed a convincing way to bring those two back together. And some people had their gripes about how they went about doing it. Some people, I know a lot of fans were upset and they thought, that Grogu should have stayed with Luke. He should have trained as a Jedi. And them coming back together was, just fan service, and it didn't make sense and all of this stuff. But me, as I would call myself a casual Star Wars fan who isn't so kind of hampered by the canon of Star Wars. I was able to let go and really understand that first off, I want Grogu. right? I want Grogu with Din. Now I will say that I wasn't opposed to the idea of Grogu becoming a Jedi because I really liked where that could go. Because I love Yoda. Yoda is my favorite character in Star Wars, and the idea of getting another little baby Yoda, even though he's not baby Yoda, and seeing him train as Jedi, because we didn't get that with Yoda. Yoda was just 100,000 years old, wise Jedi when we met him, so we never got to see that growth. Um, and to see it with Grogu would have been amazing. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it could be a spinoff of Grogu where he actually does. I know he's training to be um a Mando, so but he's a Jedi and a Mando, so like he could go either way. I really want him to like train more with the Force stuff. Like I really do. I think that's where, because he's so tiny, that's where his power lies. But that's a whole other thing we're not going to get to. We're talking about the finale. So, anyways, so I am not opposed to seeing that and seeing that spinoff and seeing the growth of Grogu, specifically as a Jedi. But that's, yeah, like again, that's a whole nother thing. I was not upset with them bringing Grogu and Din back together because I still want, it's still so much there. And I think the finale was the thing that really hit home and showed people that, like, no, we are not done with this story. There is still so much here, and there's still so much to talk about, and there's still so much to see. And the way that Grogu stepped up and saved Bo and saved Din and just became the shining light that we all knew he could be in those moments was just, and then the way that it ended with those two, for me, if they do come back with a season four, which I don't know, I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. Um, it wraps up all of the ties, the loose ends in the story that will allow them to move forward with the Mandalorian going back to being a space cowboy western type show. And the reason that I say that is very simple, because the story had gotten so convoluted. And that's one of the biggest gripes that people had with season three. Like, there's so much going on, and none of it is focusing on Dan. What is going on? And so the best way they could do that was to reestablish Mandalore and give Mandalore back its leader, not make that leader Din, because then it wouldn't be a space cowboy show, right? So they had to give the dark saber back to Din, not Din, Bo. She had to be the leader of Mandalore. They had to explain how that was going to happen. Din had to be a part of it, otherwise it wouldn't be his show. It would be a Bo-Katan spinoff. So they had to clean that up, and they did. Bo's back in control of Mandalore. Mandalore is back, thriving. We've taken care of, for the most part, of the Moff Gideon situation, which allows Din to now go off with Grogu and just be a father and son duo and continue their story outside of the larger Star Wars canon, because essentially it was outside of the larger Star Wars canon, out well, it wasn't. Let me back up. It wasn't necessarily outside of the larger Star Wars canon, because the show started with Moff Gideon wanting Yoda, and so that gets explained of why Moff Gideon wants not Yoda but Grogu, why he wants Grogu, and so all of that gets explained away. And the reason for everything happening the way it did is because we needed to wrap that story up. It needed to be over. It needed to be finished. Right? It's been lingering for 3 seasons now. We forgot. We get into the third season and we forget that the whole story starts with Moff Gideon wanting Grogu and never really explaining why. And so we have to wrap that up before they can go on the next journey, before they can, travel and just do those individual episodes where they're just being cowboys again. We needed to wrap up the larger story. And so they did that in the third season, and now they can go on. And that's the way that the ending kind of, what it, for me at least, what it symbolized, with the end of his connection, not the end, but the end of the story with Bo, the end of the story with Moff Gideon wanting Grogu and wrapping that all up. Now they're free to just go be themselves. And that's when they were sitting as cowboys with his trailer and Grogu over there. I think he was fishing or eating fish or something, eating something. It symbolizes now we're free. We can go off and just live our life and be the space cowboys that we want to be, because all of the previous stories that were tethering us to that larger Star Wars canon are cut. They're broken. They're done. And so that's why I really enjoyed the finale. And again, it wrapped up. It kind of the finale in a weird, brilliant sort of way made the entire season make sense. Although the season was very choppy and the flow of it and understanding where stories fit um, really was confusing for the majority of the season. And I think the reason why they did that was because they wanted to keep it a secret. They really wanted to keep this Moff Gideon, you know, conspiracy, you know, the explanation of it a secret. Literally, it's like the second to last episode, or was it in the last episode? I can't remember. I gotta go back and watch. But I feel like they could have, let us in a little bit more to kind of, because there was so many times, so often we would watch episodes that had seemingly had nothing to do with Din or Bo, and be like, what are we doing right now? What is this? Why is this important? And again, it doesn't get explained or why those storylines are important until the last couple episodes. So it left us really confused a lot of the time. But again, I feel like it wrapped up all of the loose ends. The finale wrapped up all of the loose ends really well. I enjoyed it the most out of any episode that I've ever seen in Mandalorian. And I'm excited for season 4. I'm excited for them to go off, be the space cowboys that they want to be, and have the adventures that we all were expecting them to have in season 3. They finally get to have that. But they couldn't do that before. They kind of wrapped up all of the existing storylines and explanations that started The Mandalorian. Right? Okay, so that is my consensus of the finale of The Mandalorian. If you hear that beeping, it's my if you think it's my smoke detector. My smoke detector needs to be the battery for my smoke detector needs to be changed, and I'm far too lazy to call maintenance. I have these really high ceilings in this loft apartment, and I'm incredibly lazy to put in a work order in order to have them come out and get a ladder and change out the batteries. So hopefully that's not too distracting. If you can hear it, I don't know if you can, but it's loud in here. Okay, so that is the wrap up for the Mandalorian finale overview. It wasn't too in depth. I started off thinking I was going to give these spoilers, but I'm like, I don't really got 30 minutes. I don't want to spend a whole 30 minutes talking about the finale of Mandalorian, only because this episode really isn't about the Mandalorian. Maybe I might do a Mandalorian series where I just talk about each episode for 30 minutes, and then I could get really in depth about the details of the episodes and spoilers and things like that. So I just wanted to say how much I really, really, really did love the finale. Now, I'm going to spend the next couple minutes talking about the next couple episodes that I'm going to do. I'm thinking about doing a Mandalorian series. I'm thinking about it. If it becomes popular enough, I'll do it. But I really want to talk about. I'm gonna start talking about my favorite. So the thing about it is, this is the thing. I'm gonna do a sci-fi series, and I'm gonna talk about my gripes with sci-fi, right? And one of my biggest gripes with like sci-fi right now is the fact that we don't have any. Um, and it's before I used to have the Sci-Fi Channel, and then it turned into the Sci-Fi Channel, and then all of a sudden it became nothing but like wrestling and or WWE wrestling and really bad science fiction movies, which I love. I'm a huge fan of bad science fiction movies, but all of our science fiction shows just stopped getting shown. And now we don't really have an avenue for like good science fiction shows. So it's a lot of shows um, that I've encountered over the years, specifically through Netflix. And that's a whole nother series I can do with all of the cancellations of really good Netflix series that everyone, has a problem with. And I'm no different. Netflix cancels a lot of good shows, but specifically good sci-fi fantasy shows that really grinds my gears because they don't give these shows enough space to find an audience. So Netflix is going to be I'm going to do like a series of Netflix podcasts. We're talking about every canceled Netflix series that I feel was an absolute travesty. So I'm going to do that. The Mandalorian is podcast series is on the table. I'm definitely going to do a podcast series on the show that has evolved to being something that I absolutely love, because it didn't start off that way. We're going to talk about we're going to talk about um what's the show? My mind just totally went blank here, but I'm going to Shadow and Bone. Shadow and Bone is a show that I'm going to do a podcast on, because I thought the second season of that show was absolutely phenomenal, which is a huge jump from my opinions on the first season. So I'm going to do a podcast on that, and I'm probably going to do a podcast just kind of recapping the first season, and then talking about each episode of the second season, and then going into possibly reading the Six of Crows books, because I think they are going to move forward with this spinoff. If not, this is the thing about Netflix though. We don't know. We don't know if they're going to move forward with the spinoff. And if by chance they decide to not move forward with the spinoff, I think I'll be in a good position by reading the book and still being able to talk about it. So those are some of the podcasts that I'm thinking about doing. I'm going to have on the back burner, put out there. If you're interested, please subscribe, please listen. But that's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about on the GOAT. That's really all I have for you for this episode, and stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.